Most people live as if money is the master, running after it day by day, chasing what slips through their fingers. But listen carefully. Wealth begins not in your bank account, but in your mind. True prosperity is built when you learn to think like the rich, disciplined, strategic, patient. It's not the hustle for money that creates freedom. It's the art of creating value, mastering your habits, and aligning your life so opportunity and wealth naturally follow. Today, I'll show you how to shift your thinking, control your actions, and let money work for you, not the other way around. You see, too many people spend their lives worrying about the size of their paycheck. They measure success by the numbers on a bank statement, by what lands in their wallet at the end of the month. I learned early on, through trial, error, and more than a few painful lessons, that wealth doesn't begin with money, it begins with philosophy. The rich don't chase the paycheck, they focus on creating value. They ask, not how much can I earn, but how much can I contribute? How much can I serve? Because it is in the act of giving value that money, almost as if by magic, comes to you. When I first started out, I was obsessed with earning. I thought if I could just get a higher paying job, buy the right clothes, drive the right car, everything would fall into place. But I quickly discovered that a bigger paycheck without a bigger philosophy only leads to bigger problems, bigger debts, bigger stress, bigger dissatisfaction. One day, sitting across from a mentor who had quietly built a life of both comfort and respect, I realized that what separated him from the masses wasn't the hours he worked or the opportunities he chased. It was the way he thought. He thought about growth. He thought about learning. He thought about service. His wealth was not an accident. It was the natural outcome of a philosophy focused on value. So how do you shift from chasing money to cultivating wealth through philosophy? It begins with a simple change in mindset. Each time you find yourself asking, how can I make more money? Pause, and instead ask, how can I become more valuable? What skill can I develop? What knowledge can I absorb? How can I better serve the people around me? Because wealth is attracted to growth. It flows to those who are expanding their capacity, who are increasing their usefulness to the world. I've seen young men and women, early in their careers, make modest incomes, yet live lives of abundance simply because they focused on learning, growing, and helping others. Conversely, I've known people with six-figure salaries who were financially and emotionally bankrupt because they never grew beyond themselves. Here's a practical step I take every single day, and it has made more difference than any business strategy or financial tip. Every evening, before I close my eyes, I ask myself 3 questions. What did I learn today? How did I grow today? And who did I serve today? Sometimes the answers are small. A book I read, a conversation I had, a piece of advice I offered. Other times, they are significant. A project completed, a life impacted, a problem solved. But the key is consistency. By reflecting daily, you begin to train your mind to prioritize growth over greed, contribution over consumption. You start to measure success in wisdom and value rather than in dollars and cents. And when you live this way, money stops being the goal, it becomes the reward. It becomes the natural outcome of a life lived with purpose, discipline, and contribution. Remember, wealth begins not with what you earn, but with who you become. Grow, serve, learn, and the money will follow. I want you to think about something very simple yet rarely understood. Money is not something you chase, it's something you attract. Most people spend their lives running after paychecks, promotions, or the next investment, thinking that the harder they chase it, the faster it will come. I discovered early in my journey that this is the language of the poor. Money doesn't respond to desperation or urgency. Money responds to value. It is the natural reward for solving problems, for making life easier, better, or richer for others. When you understand that, you stop chasing and start creating. Let me give you an example from my early years. I was just starting out, broke, completely unsure of my financial footing, but I had a job where I could help people. Instead of obsessing over how much I could earn that month, I asked myself, how can I make myself useful? How can I solve real problems for the people I work with? I studied, I learned, I practiced my skills, and over time, the money came, not because I demanded it, but because I became someone worth paying. That's the difference between chasing and attracting. When you chase, you are in need. When you attract, you are in value. People pay attention to and reward value, not desperation. So how do you become the kind of person who attracts money instead of chasing it? The strategy is simple, though it requires discipline. Focus on becoming the person that others naturally want to pay. Identify one skill, one talent, or one expertise that solves a real-world problem. Then, commit to mastering it. Don't dabble. Don't seek shortcuts. Daily practice, relentless improvement, and a mindset of service are what turn a simple skill into an irreplaceable asset. I've seen it countless times. A man with a modest talent for teaching becomes a sought-after trainer because he hones that skill daily. A woman with a knack for organization turns her ability into a business that thrives. Money flows to the person who provides results, who delivers solutions. Here's a practical exercise I recommend. Pick one skill that can make a difference to others. If you're good with numbers, make that expertise bulletproof. If you can communicate ideas, refine it until people listen. If you can create something, practice until it becomes exceptional. Then, every day, invest time in perfecting that skill, even when no one is watching. When your skill becomes noticeable, when it produces results, the world will begin to pay you naturally. You no longer need to chase, you simply receive. And the beauty of this is that it's not limited to age, background, or resources. Even with nothing but your mind and determination, you can develop a skill that attracts financial rewards. Remember, the rich don't chase money, they attract it. They become the kind of people the world is willing to pay because they solve problems, create value, and continually invest in themselves. Start today. Identify that one skill. Practice relentlessly. Serve with integrity. Let money be the byproduct of your excellence. Let's talk about time, because this is where the rich and the poor see the world differently. The poor think in weeks, maybe months at best. They ask themselves, what will I have next Friday? The rich, on the other hand, think in years, decades, even generations. Wealthy people plant trees under whose shade they may never sit. They understand that the real power of money isn't in spending it as soon as it arrives, but in allowing it to grow, to compound, to work silently in the background while they focus on life, learning, and building value. I remember when I was first introduced to this idea. I was barely making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, and the temptation to spend every dollar as soon as it arrived was overwhelming. But my mentor challenged me, Jim, if you never put anything aside today, what will you have tomorrow? At first it seemed impossible. How could I save when I barely had enough to cover necessities? Yet he encouraged me to start small, not with grand gestures, but with a simple, disciplined habit. Every payday, before buying anything, set aside a portion, 10, maybe 20%, and let it grow. It wasn't the amount that mattered. It was the habit of thinking ahead. Over time, that habit transformed my life. I realized that the secret of long-term prosperity isn't some hidden formula or rare opportunity. It's consistent action over years. The moment I began prioritizing the future over the immediate, everything changed. I started looking at opportunities differently. Investments that seemed slow at first became powerful engines of growth. Projects that required patience and persistence became the foundation of stability. And more than just money, my mindset shifted. I was no longer a slave to the next bill or the next paycheck. I was a planner, a strategist, a builder. Here's how you can do it too. Every payday, no matter how much you earn, put aside 10 to 20% before spending a single cent on anything else. Don't negotiate, don't postpone, don't rationalize, make it automatic. Even if it's a small amount, the habit is more important than the size. Let that money be untouchable, your commitment to your future. Then watch what happens. Over months and years, the power of discipline and compounding transforms your life. You may not feel rich immediately, but you are planting seeds that will eventually grow into shade, security, and freedom. And remember, long-term thinking isn't just about saving money. It's about trading short-term pleasures for long-term prosperity. It's about saying no to instant gratification and yes to growth, to learning, to investment in yourself and your future. Every time you delay a purchase, every time you invest in knowledge or skills, you are essentially planting another tree. One day, those trees will form a forest of opportunity, a shelter of stability, and a legacy that will outlast you. So start now. Choose patience over impulse. Prioritize long-term vision over fleeting desires. Commit to the habit, not the amount. Plant your trees today, and one day you'll enjoy a wealth far greater than money alone. Wealth isn't about luck, it's about discipline. You see, opportunities are everywhere. They float around like leaves in the wind, but not everyone can catch them. Some people stumble over gold and never notice it because they lack the habits, the discipline, the daily consistency to act when opportunity knocks. I've met brilliant people with amazing ideas who never became wealthy, not because they didn't know what to do, but because they didn't consistently do what they knew was right. Discipline is the bridge between opportunity and achievement, and it's often overlooked in a world chasing quick wins. I remember when I first started taking control of my finances. I thought wealth would come from finding the perfect investment, the ideal business idea, or a lucky break. I chased one opportunity after another, often exhausted, often frustrated. But the real turning point came when I focused less on finding opportunity and more on mastering the small, consistent actions I could take every day. I began tracking every dollar I spent, every purchase I made, every debt I owed, every saving I attempted. At first it felt tedious. Some days I wanted to give up. But slowly, something incredible happened. Awareness gave birth to control. Control gave birth to confidence. Confidence drew opportunities to me, not the other way around. The truth is, wealth is built brick by brick. You don't wake up one morning and find a mansion or $1 million in the bank. You build it habit by habit, decision by decision, day by day. Discipline is the mortar that holds those bricks together. Every time you resist an impulsive purchase, every time you invest in knowledge or skill instead of instant gratification, you're laying another brick. Small, simple actions, tracking expenses, saving a fixed amount, investing in personal growth, compound into something far greater than the sum of their parts. Here's a practical step that can change everything. For the next 30 days, track your spending. Write down every dollar, every expense, every impulse buy. Be brutally honest. Don't justify, don't excuse, just record. At the end of 30 days, review it. You'll see patterns you never noticed. You'll discover where your money leaks away, where habits undermine your wealth, and where discipline can reclaim control. Awareness is the first step, but once awareness turns into consistent action, wealth follows naturally. The beauty of discipline is that it works regardless of circumstances. You don't need a booming economy, a high-paying job, or a stroke of luck. You need consistency. You need the commitment to do the right thing even when it's boring, inconvenient, or invisible. Wealthy people aren't smarter than others. They're consistent. They make decisions that compound over time. The discipline they practice, when no one is watching, eventually shows up in their bank accounts, in their freedom, and in their lives. So don't wait for opportunity to arrive. Train yourself to act consistently, to track, to save, to invest, to learn, and to grow. Every single day, discipline turns small habits into massive results. Opportunity will always be there, but only the discipline will seize it. Take control of your actions, master your habits, and the wealth you seek will follow. One of the greatest lessons I've learned about wealth and success is that life is never going to be easy. You can wish, you can hope, you can pray, but the circumstances aren't going to line up perfectly. The rich don't sit around waiting for the perfect conditions. They build the strength, skill, and character to handle whatever life throws at them. I used to complain about my own limitations, my lack of resources, the challenges I faced. But one day, I realized that wishing for easier circumstances was a waste of time. The real question is never, why is life so hard? But how am I going to rise to meet it? The philosophy is simple but powerful. Don't hope the world changes for you. Change yourself so that you can thrive in any world. I remember the first time I faced a particularly tough business challenge. I was broke, over my head in debt, and the odds seemed stacked against me. My first instinct was frustration and fear. But then I shifted my thinking. Instead of asking why this was happening, I asked what I could learn, what skills could I develop, what habits could I adopt that would allow me not just to survive, but to succeed. That moment of reflection changed everything. Growth, not comfort, became my focus. The strategy is to consistently invest in becoming better rather than wishing things were easier. Tough conditions aren't obstacles, they are opportunities to grow. The world will always be unpredictable. Markets fluctuate. Relationships can be challenging. Unexpected bills arrive. The question isn't whether challenges exist, it's whether you are strong enough to handle them. Every obstacle is a test, every difficulty a classroom. Those who prosper aren't those who get lucky, they are those who equip themselves to handle what comes their way. Here's a practical step that will bring this philosophy to life. Take a notebook and write down your 3 biggest obstacles right now. Don't just list them, feel them. Be honest. Then, for each obstacle, ask yourself, how can I grow to overcome this? List at least 2 specific actions. Maybe it's learning a new skill to handle a work challenge. Maybe it's improving your communication or emotional resilience to manage a relationship. Maybe it's creating a habit that builds financial control. The point isn't to wish the obstacle away, it's to grow enough to meet it. I did this exercise early in my career. I listed my debts, my lack of knowledge about business, and my inability to speak confidently in front of people. For each, I created a growth plan. I learned basic accounting. I read and studied philosophy and business principles, and I practiced speaking daily. The obstacles didn't disappear overnight, but I became stronger, smarter, and more capable. Soon, the very things I feared became the sources of my strength. Remember, wishing for easier conditions keeps you weak. Investing in yourself keeps you unstoppable. Every challenge is a chance to expand your abilities, to refine your mind, to strengthen your character. The richer you become in skill, wisdom, and resilience, the less the world's difficulties matter. Your power grows from within, and when you focus on becoming better, everything else, money, opportunities, freedom, follows naturally. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that success isn't something you chase, it's something you attract. Many people spend their lives running after money, promotions, accolades, and recognition, believing that if they chase hard enough, they will finally catch it. I've seen it over and over again. People exhausted, chasing every opportunity, yet somehow always one step behind. Then I realized the truth. Success is not about pursuit. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally draws it in. You don't force it, you cultivate it. You don't grab it with desperation, you attract it with character. The philosophy is that wealth, freedom, and recognition are byproducts of the person you become. The rich don't measure life by their paycheck. They measure it by their habits, integrity, and contribution. Years ago, when I was struggling to get ahead, I focused solely on earning more. I chased deals, hustled tirelessly, and yet I often felt anxious, empty, and exhausted. Then I paused and asked myself a simple question. What kind of person attracts success naturally? That question changed everything. I began to focus less on the income and more on the principles that create wealth. I worked on discipline, on knowledge, on consistency, on becoming a person of value. And slowly, the results began to follow. Not instantly, but inevitably. The strategy is clear. Invest first in yourself, in your character, in your ability to contribute. Work on your skills, your mindset, your integrity, and your discipline. Make your behavior, your habits, and your knowledge so strong that opportunities have no choice but to find you. When you become consistent, dependable, and valuable, success is not something you run after, it is drawn to you. It is like planting a tree. You don't force the fruit to grow, you nurture the roots, tend the soil, and care for the tree daily. Eventually, the fruit appears naturally, fully formed and ripe. Here's a practical step that makes this philosophy real. Take a notebook and write a personal mission statement. Define what you stand for, what you want to contribute, and what principles you will live by daily. Don't make it about money, status, or appearances. Make it about purpose, growth, and character. Once it's written, live by it consistently. Review it every morning. Ask yourself if today's actions align with it, and adjust as needed. If your mission guides your behavior, money and success will inevitably follow as a byproduct, because the world rewards those who add value and act with integrity. I remember when I first did this exercise, I wrote down my core mission: to grow in knowledge, share wisdom, serve others, and live with integrity. At the time, I had little money, no large network, and many doubts. But by living daily according to that mission, doors began to open, relationships strengthened, and opportunities appeared that I never would have found chasing income alone. The energy shifted from desperation to purpose, and that shift attracted the results I had been seeking all along. Remember, success is drawn, not pursued. Become the person who naturally attracts it. Build character, cultivate skills, contribute consistently, and live with purpose. The wealth you seek will no longer be a distant goal. It will arrive as a natural consequence of who you have become. One of the most important lessons I've ever learned about wealth is this: money should serve you, not the other way around. I see so many people working tirelessly, sacrificing time, energy, and even health, only to find themselves in a constant chase, always feeling behind, always running to pay bills, always hoping the next paycheck will bring relief. That is the language of someone who serves money instead of commanding it. But the moment you understand that money is a tool, a servant, and not a master, everything changes. Money is not the goal, it is the vehicle. It can either empower you or enslave you, and the choice is yours. The philosophy is simple. Wealth is about control, not abundance. You could earn thousands a month and still feel poor if you allow money to dictate your life. Conversely, you could earn modestly but feel rich if you make money work for you strategically. Years ago, I was broke and deeply in debt. I was working long hours, chasing every opportunity for extra income, yet I felt trapped. Then a mentor asked me a question that changed my approach forever. Are you managing your money, or is it managing you? That question stuck like a hammer on steel. I realized that until I made money, my servant, no increase in income would ever bring freedom. The strategy is to allocate every dollar wisely to ensure it grows, serves a purpose, and multiplies over time. Don't spend everything you earn on short-term pleasures or instant gratification. Instead, divide your income so that it builds your future while still providing for today. This is how the wealthy think. They live on a portion of what they earn, invest in themselves, invest in assets that create passive income, and contribute to others. Wealth is not about luck or windfalls. It's about consistent, disciplined action with every paycheck. A practical step I always recommend is simple yet profoundly effective. Every paycheck should be split into 4 categories: 70% for living expenses, 10% for learning, 10% for investing, and 10% for giving. Start small if that's all you can manage, but start consistently. The 70% ensures your present is secure without overextending. The 10% dedicated to learning turns money into knowledge, and knowledge is the ultimate leverage. The 10% allocated to investing begins building assets that earn while you sleep. And the 10% for giving creates abundance by opening channels for opportunity and generosity. I remember when I first applied this method. I was earning little, and the idea of setting aside 10% for investment felt impossible. But I started anyway, even if the amounts were small. Over time, those small steps compounded into real wealth, assets that worked for me, not me working endlessly for them. And giving created relationships, goodwill, and opportunities I could never have anticipated. It taught me that money, when properly managed, is an ally, a servant that multiplies your freedom instead of chaining you to a life of endless work. Remember, money should serve you, not enslave you. Make it a tool, a servant, a faithful partner in your pursuit of freedom. Control it with discipline, allocate it with wisdom, and let it grow. When money becomes your servant, not your master, you don't just earn, you create, you multiply, and you achieve the freedom that no paycheck alone can provide. One of the most overlooked lessons about building wealth is the importance of living below your means while keeping your ambition high. Too often, I've seen people get a raise or earn more, and immediately their spending inflates to match. They buy a bigger car, a larger house, more gadgets, or more luxuries, and before they know it, they're back where they started, or even worse, in debt. Lifestyle inflation is a silent thief. It sneaks in quietly, and it can destroy financial progress faster than any mistake or downturn ever could. The key is learning the balance. Live modestly in your lifestyle, but audaciously in your goals. Your ambition should stretch beyond what you currently earn, while your daily spending stays disciplined. The philosophy here is simple but powerful. Your lifestyle is not a measure of wealth, it's a measure of choices. Wealth is built when you control your spending, not when you chase the latest luxuries. I remember early in my life, I had a friend who earned twice as much as I did, yet he had no savings, no investments, and no plan. Meanwhile, I was earning less, yet I had a notebook tracking every dollar, and I knew exactly where my money was going. It wasn't about having more income, it was about making the income I had work for me. Every dollar redirected toward assets, knowledge, or investments was a step toward financial freedom. Every dollar wasted on status or short-term pleasure was a step backward. The strategy is straightforward. Control your spending and channel extra income toward growth, not consumption. Ambition should be your fuel, not your excuse to overspend. This doesn't mean living miserably or denying yourself occasional enjoyment. It means being conscious about priorities. Focus on what compounds over time. Spend thoughtfully today to enjoy freedom tomorrow. Treat every dollar as a worker. Some of it is for survival, some of it is for growth, some for learning, and some for giving. The difference between the wealthy and the broke isn't always how much they earn, it's what they do with what they earn. The practical step to make this work is accountability. Track every expense for 30 days. Write down everything: coffee, subscriptions, dining, entertainment, small indulgences, every penny. At the end of the month, review it honestly. Identify at least one recurring waste, something you've been spending money on automatically, without thought, that could be redirected toward investments. Maybe it's a subscription you rarely use, eating out too often, or impulse purchases online. Redirect those funds into a small investment or savings account. The point is less about the amount and more about the habit. Start small, but start consistently. When your spending is intentional and your ambition is unrestrained, you create a system where every dollar moves with purpose, where wealth is no longer accidental, and where freedom grows naturally. I've done this myself over the years, living modestly even as opportunities and income expanded. The sense of security, the power of choice, and the ability to say yes to life on your own terms are far more valuable than any momentary indulgence. Ambition drives you forward, but discipline in lifestyle keeps you on the path. Wealth, after all, is less about the numbers in your bank account and more about the choices you make consistently. Live below your means, above your ambition, and you'll discover freedom, opportunity, and power that money alone cannot buy. One of the greatest lessons I've learned in life is that wealth is not only about how much you make, it's also about how much you protect. I've seen too many people work tirelessly to build their fortune, only to watch it disappear through carelessness, poor planning, or avoidable mistakes. This is the silent danger that most people overlook. They assume that wealth is only about opportunity and luck, but the truth is, a fortune can vanish faster than it arrives if it isn't protected. Wealth lost is rarely due to bad luck. It's almost always due to inattention, neglect, or lack of preparation. Understanding this distinction is crucial. You can work hard, earn more than you need, and still find yourself back at square one if you fail to safeguard what you've built. The philosophy is simple. Every dollar you earn carries responsibility. Protect it as fiercely as you earn it, because without protection, all your effort is exposed to unnecessary risk. This isn't just about money. It's about freedom, security, and peace of mind. When I first started building assets, I learned quickly that excitement over income must be tempered with wisdom. I saw a neighbor, for example, who invested everything into a single venture without understanding the risks or insuring against loss. Within a year, the venture failed, and all that energy, all that time, all that growth vanished. It was a harsh but invaluable lesson. Wealth without protection is fragile, no matter how hard you work. The strategy to protect what you earn is both simple and methodical. First, reduce unnecessary risk. Don't gamble on speculative ventures without proper understanding. Second, insure your assets, your home, your car, your business, and even your health. Insurance is not a cost, it's a shield that preserves the results of your labor. Third, understand taxes. Knowing the rules and planning accordingly allows you to legally keep more of what you earn. And fourth, maintain an emergency fund. Life is unpredictable, and a financial buffer is the difference between temporary setbacks and catastrophic loss. Protecting wealth requires vigilance, not panic, and foresight, not fear. The practical step begins with assessment. Review every insurance policy you hold. Make sure it covers the risks that matter most. Next, calculate your essential monthly expenses and set aside at least 3 months' worth in a liquid, easily accessible emergency fund. This creates a foundation of security that allows you to take calculated risks without fear. Protecting wealth also includes reviewing your ongoing investments. Ensure they align with your risk tolerance and long-term objectives. And finally, make it a habit to periodically revisit this plan, adjusting as your life, income, or obligations change. I learned the power of protection early. I remember a time when an unexpected medical expense nearly wiped out my savings. Because I had insurance and a small emergency fund, I wasn't crippled. I could recover, continue building, and maintain focus on long-term goals. That moment taught me a critical lesson. Earning wealth without protecting it is like building a castle without a foundation. Discipline in protection is as important as discipline in earning. Treat your wealth as if it were fragile, because in many ways, protect it, preserve it, and the foundation you lay today will ensure your freedom tomorrow. One of the most important shifts in thinking that separates the wealthy from everyone else is learning to think in terms of assets, not salaries. I remember when I first started on this journey, I was like many people, focused on how much I could earn each month, how much I could save, and how quickly I could spend what was left over. I believed that a high paycheck was the answer to financial freedom. But the truth is far more profound. Wealth is created not by income alone, but by the assets you acquire and the way they work for you over time. You can earn a fortune and still be poor if every dollar leaves your hands as quickly as it arrives. On the other hand, someone with modest income but smartly chosen assets can achieve lasting security, freedom, and growth. This is the philosophy that transforms a paycheck into a legacy. Assets are anything that puts money in your pocket, while liabilities drain it away. Yet most people confuse liabilities for assets. A flashy car, an expensive gadget, or a home that costs more to maintain than it produces value. I learned this lesson firsthand when I bought my first dream car. It looked impressive, but the moment I drove it off the lot, it began to depreciate. The payments, insurance, and upkeep consumed money that could have been invested elsewhere. That experience opened my eyes. A rich person's purchases are measured not by enjoyment today, but by the value they add tomorrow. Wealth grows when your money is a soldier that works tirelessly, not a servant that disappears the instant you command it. The strategy, then, is to evaluate every purchase through the lens of future income. Before spending, ask yourself, will this make me richer or poorer in the long term? This question changes everything. It transforms shopping from impulse into calculation, from gratification into strategy. When I started applying this principle, I noticed small but powerful changes. Instead of buying the latest electronics, I invested in books that expanded my skills. Instead of upgrading my wardrobe unnecessarily, I invested in courses and experiences that increased my earning potential. Slowly, the habit compounded. My money began to generate more money because I focused on assets, stocks, investments, skills, and intellectual property rather than liabilities disguised as symbols of status. The practical step is straightforward and actionable. For every potential purchase, pause and ask, does this make me richer or poorer? Then, track the results in a notebook. Write down why you made the decision, the cost, and its future impact. Over time, this creates a tangible map of how your money serves you or drains you. I remember keeping a small notebook when I first implemented this practice. At the end of each month, I reviewed my decisions. The patterns became clear. Purchases that added value propelled me forward, while those that didn't taught me lessons without regret. Tracking this way builds not only financial intelligence, but self-discipline, a combination more powerful than any salary raise. Thinking in terms of assets, not salaries, fundamentally changes your relationship with money. It shifts focus from earning to creating, from consumption to growth, from temporary pleasure to lasting freedom. Wealth is not a number in a paycheck. It is the sum of wisely chosen assets, working quietly behind the scenes. Evaluate every purchase. Invest in what multiplies. And watch as your money stops controlling you and begins serving you. Day after day, quietly building a foundation that lasts a lifetime. One of the most powerful, yet often overlooked truths about wealth is that your environment shapes your financial destiny. When I first began my journey, I didn't realize how much the people around me influenced my thinking, my habits, and ultimately my results. Early on, I was surrounded by well-meaning friends who worked hard but never seemed to get ahead. Conversations revolved around complaints, limitations, and excuses. I noticed that their mindset subtly became mine. I found myself echoing the same doubts and fears. It wasn't their fault. It was simply the natural influence of environment. Wealthy people understand this principle deeply. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Philosophically, this makes sense. Human beings are creatures of imitation. We absorb the attitudes, habits, and priorities of those around us, often unconsciously. If the people you admire are financially literate, disciplined, and ambitious, their mindset becomes a mirror for you. Their ideas challenge your own, their successes inspire action, and their failures teach lessons without you paying the price. On the other hand, if your daily interactions focus on scarcity, blame, or the pursuit of instant gratification, your thinking and decisions will inevitably reflect that. Environment, in effect, either limits you or expands you. The strategy, then, is simple yet transformative. Connect intentionally with mentors, peers, or communities that elevate your financial intelligence. Seek out those who not only know how to build wealth, but are willing to share their knowledge and guide you through the complexities of money. Look for people who are ahead of you in skill, discipline, or experience, and learn from their habits, their failures, and their insights. When I committed to this, my life changed. I began attending workshops, joining study groups, and meeting with people who were financially responsible and forward-thinking. Suddenly, ideas that had once seemed abstract became practical. I saw patterns, strategies, and opportunities I hadn't noticed before. The conversations I had fueled my growth faster than any book or course alone could. The practical step is clear and actionable. Seek out a mastermind group, an online investing community, or a book club focused on wealth creation. Attend consistently. Participate actively. Share your wins and your challenges. Observe what others do differently. And don't be afraid to emulate the habits of those achieving what you aspire to. I remember joining a small investment group in my early career. Their weekly discussions on financial decisions, market strategies, and personal discipline reshaped my approach entirely. Just by being present, I absorbed wisdom that accelerated my progress. Over time, the influence of that environment became internalized. It changed how I think, act, and even talk about money. Surrounding yourself with wealth-minded people isn't about envy or competition. It's about elevation. It's about creating a gravity that pulls you toward greater knowledge, bolder action, and smarter decisions. The lessons are endless. How to manage risk, how to invest intelligently, how to create multiple streams of income, and how to avoid mistakes others have already paid for. The people you surround yourself with become the architects of your habits, your confidence, and your perspective on money. If you choose wisely, your environment becomes your greatest asset. It will challenge you, educate you, and inspire you to think bigger than you ever thought possible. Wealth is not created in isolation. It is grown in a network, nurtured in communities, and amplified through relationships. The people around you are either anchors or engines. Choose the ones who push you forward, and your financial journey accelerates exponentially. As we reach the close of this conversation, I want you to pause and reflect for a moment. Everything we've discussed today, the philosophies, the strategies, the practical steps, are not abstract ideas or motivational cliches. They are principles that, when applied consistently, have the power to transform your financial life, your mindset, and ultimately your destiny. Wealth is not about luck, timing, or inheritance. It's about decisions, habits, and the discipline to follow through, day after day, brick by brick. It's about choosing today to take responsibility for your money, your learning, and your future, rather than leaving it to chance or circumstance. The truth is simple. You can start from where you are, regardless of age, income, or background. The journey to financial freedom begins with a single step, a decision to think differently, to act deliberately, and to surround yourself with people and ideas that elevate you. Every dollar you manage wisely, every skill you develop, every habit of discipline you cultivate, compounds over time. These are the seeds of your financial future, and the harvest depends on what you plant consistently, not occasionally. So here is my call to action for you. Take out a notebook or open a file on your phone and write down one concrete action for each principle we've explored today. Decide who you will become, not just what you want to earn. Commit to living below your means while thinking beyond your circumstances. Identify one skill to master, one habit to build, one asset to create. Reach out to a mentor, join a group, or immerse yourself in a learning environment that will challenge and inspire you. Remember, knowledge without action is merely information. Action transforms knowledge into results. Today, you have the opportunity to become someone who doesn't just wish for financial freedom, but earns it through thoughtful choices, deliberate growth, and disciplined action. Begin today. Start small if you must, but start. Your future is waiting, and it will be shaped not by luck, but by the steps you take right now.